The most important advice that I've ever received is to stop moving my own goalposts. Last week, I watched my friend Mark. He broke down in his Tesla. He's a founder. He just crossed $10 million in revenue, and he's sitting there, and it's going to sound ridiculous because it is, and he's sitting there and he's telling me how he feels like this complete failure. His company grew 300% this year. His team expanded from 5 to 50 people. He just bought his dream house, and yet he's convinced, fully convinced, that he's falling behind. He said, I should be at $20 million in revenue by now. And he was staring at his phone where there's some idiot on LinkedIn that was bragging about their $100 million exit. And he said something that really hit because I felt it before too. Everyone else seems to be moving so much faster. And that's when it hit me. Mark isn't failing at all. He's falling for one of the most dangerous traps in personal growth, the invisible progress paradox. 3 years ago, Mark was ecstatic about his first $10,000 month. Now he beats himself up over $800,000 months. 2 years ago, he celebrated hiring his first employee. Now, managing 50 people, it feels like he's not scaling fast enough. And last year, he had a feature in a local business magazine. It made his year. Now, national press mentions, they barely register. See, his progress didn't disappear. His standards just kept pace with his growth. It's like a shadow that stretches ahead of you no matter how far you walk. And Mark isn't alone. This pattern shows up everywhere once you start looking for it. The programmer who doesn't see how far they've come because they're too busy stressing about what they haven't learned yet. The writer who can't appreciate their published book because they're focused on the bestseller list they haven't hit. Or the athlete who forgets they once struggled to run a mile because now they're angry about not qualifying for the Boston Marathon. So today, I want to break down why your brain is wired to erase your progress, how high achievers accidentally build their own psychological prisons, and the counterintuitive way to maintain ambition without losing perspective. And lastly, I want to teach over a very simple system for making your progress visible again. But first, you need to understand something crucial. The same drive that got you where you are might be blinding you to how far you've come. Because something that nobody tells you about personal growth is that success can be a form of self-gaslighting. Every time you level up, your brain does something fascinating. It rewrites your definition of normal. What used to be a summit, it becomes your new base camp. And while this psychological adaptation helped our ancestors survive, it's creating a crisis of confidence in today's hyper achievement-oriented world. So let me show you how this works. Remember your first ever presentation at work. Your hands were shaking, your voice cracked, you're sweating, you feel cold, clammy, nervous, anxious, all of it. Your heart is racing. Getting through it felt like climbing Mount Everest. And if you fast forward to today, you probably knock out presentations without a second thought. That's not just practice. That's your baseline shifting. And the problem is your brain is terrible at remembering old baselines. It's like trying to remember what it felt like to not know how to read. You can intellectually understand that there was a time before you had that skill, but you can't actually access the feeling of not knowing, and it creates this very dangerous illusion. Think about it like this. When you're climbing a mountain, each step changes your view of what's below. The higher you go, the smaller everything beneath you looks. But unlike mountain climbing, in personal growth, you can't easily look down and see how far you've come. Your brain keeps updating the map while erasing your tracks. This idea of invisible progress is very important because it messes with people's heads when they first hear it. The better you get at something, the worse you might feel about your abilities. Let me say that one more time. The better you get at something, the worse you might feel about your abilities. And this isn't just imposter syndrome, it's math. When you're a beginner, you can see 90% of your field. You know what you know, and you have a decent grasp of what you don't know. And as you advance, you start seeing 95% of your field. But that extra 5% reveals complexities that you never even knew existed. And by the time you're an expert, you might see 99% of your field, and all of its intricate challenges, nuanced problems, endless possibilities for improvement. And the tragic irony is that the more mastery you gain, the more aware you become of what you haven't mastered yet. And this creates an expertise paradox, because the beginners are going to say, well, this seems manageable. And then the intermediates are going to say, this is harder than I thought. And then the experts are going to say, I know enough to know how much I don't know. And that's just the start of the problem, because while your standards are rising, something else is happening. You're forgetting to measure what matters. This leads to something that I like to call the metrics trap. Last week, I was talking to a creator who has 100,000 subscribers. And you want to know what they were upset about? Their last video only, I put that in air quotes, got 20,000 views in 24 hours. 3 years ago, they would have been popping champagne for 1,000 views, but they weren't measuring growth anymore. They were measuring gap, the distance between where they are and where they think they should be. This is a metrics trap. When you start measuring yourself against your ideals instead of your progress. It's like being angry at yourself for only running a half marathon because you haven't done a full one yet. Meanwhile, you forgot that last year you couldn't run a mile. But this is where it gets really interesting. So there are some biological roots of never enough. Your brain has a feature that's becoming a bug. Scientists call it hedonic adaptation. It's your mind's remarkable ability to adjust to new circumstances. It's the same mechanism that helps you adapt to a new city, recover from a loss, or get used to success. But in the context of achievement, it's like having a psychological credit card with no limit. Every accomplishment you charge to it gets normalized faster than you can say what's next. So let me show you how deep this goes. A study of Olympic medalists found something fascinating. Bronze medalists were often happier than silver medalists. Now why? Because bronze winners were thrilled to be on the podium at all. Silver medalists could only think about the fact that they weren't getting gold. Same podium, different baseline, different happiness. And this isn't just about sports. I see it in business every single day. The founder who hit $1 million in revenue but can't celebrate because they're fixated on getting to $10 million. Or the investor who doubled their portfolio but feels behind because they missed it on a unicorn. Or the writer who landed a book deal but is already stressed about the bestseller list. Now, this is what's actually happening in your brain. See, our prehistoric ancestors needed two things to survive: the ability to adapt quickly to new situations and the drive to always want more: food, safety, resources. Now, this was brilliant programming for survival, but the problem is that we are now running Paleolithic software on modern hardware. Every time you achieve something, your brain quickly normalizes the achievement, that's adaptation, and then immediately starts wanting more, that's drive. And then it erases the emotional memory of the struggle, and that's efficiency. It's like your mind is this ruthless editor, constantly deleting your origin story while adding new chapters of pressure. Now, this is what brings us to the success amnesia effect, because it gets even more interesting. So research shows that as people become more successful, they actually misremember how hard things were at the beginning. This success amnesia, it creates a double blindness. So you can't see your progress because your standards keep rising, and you can't remember your starting point because success has rewritten your memories. And this was perfectly illustrated. I interviewed a tech CEO for my podcast last month, and she was telling me about her overnight success until I pulled up an interview we did together 5 years ago where she detailed her near bankruptcy, a divorce, 3 pivots that preceded her breakthrough. She had literally forgotten the struggle, and her new baseline completely erased it. She did not bring up any of that stuff in the new interview. You may be thinking, okay, I missed some progress markers, so what? It's actually a bigger issue than you think, because progress blindness isn't just uncomfortable, it can actually be downright dangerous. It creates a special kind of successful person who's simultaneously crushing it and crumbling inside. And this creates a paradox: successful, but miserable. I was at dinner with 3 founders last week, combined net worth north of $100 million. And you wanna know what they spoke about for 2 hours? How they're falling behind, how they should be further along, how everyone else seems to be moving faster. This isn't just imposter syndrome. It's a form of high-functioning anxiety that's becoming an epidemic amongst high achievers. Look, having high standards isn't inherently bad. It's probably what got you to where you are right now. Your rising bar has been acting like a personal trainer for your success, always pushing you to do one more rep, lift a little heavier, go a little further. But this is the problem. When your standards rise faster than your ability to recognize progress, you create something that I like to call the achievement treadmill. You hit a goal, instead of celebrating, you immediately set a higher one. You discount the achievement because, quote unquote, it should have been bigger, and then you miss the learning opportunities from your success, and you carry forward the stress, but not the confidence. The constant raising of the bar without acknowledgement of progress creates 4 devastating effects. Burnout, because you push harder because you don't feel like you're doing enough. You mistake exhaustion for laziness and you push even harder. Your body and mind never get the recovery they need. You have a relationship tax because you're harder on your team because we should be further along. Personal relationships start to suffer because you're never there yet, and you stop celebrating others' wins because they seem small. You have a learning block because you're missing crucial lessons because you're too focused on what's next. You don't document what worked because it quote unquote wasn't good enough, even though it was phenomenal. And you repeat mistakes because you're not pausing to reflect. And then you have a confidence gap. External success grows while internal confidence shrinks. You trust yourself less because you're always behind. Decision-making suffers because you've lost your internal compass. This is why we need a progress recognition framework. This is something that changed everything for me, for one of my great friends. He was a very obvious victim of this phenomenon. It is a simple system that makes invisible progress visible again. So, framework, whatever you want to call it, I like to call it a progress mirror, but what it's designed to do is to show you what your brain is trying to hide. So this is how it works. This is how we solve this problem. It's 2 parts. The first part is called the 3 time horizons. Instead of focusing on where you want to be, which your brain already does way too well and way too often, you're going to systematically look at 3 time periods: the 12-month mirror, the 90-day snapshot, and the 30-day reality check. For the 12-month mirror, I want you to pull up your calendar from exactly 1 year ago. I want you to look at what scared you then. I want you to review the problems that kept you up at night, and I want you to check your bank statements, other metrics for your business. Then you're going to do a 90-day snapshot. You're going to list daily challenges from last quarter. You're going to review projects you were struggling with. You're going to look at the decisions that stressed you out, and you're going to check your common emotional states. And then you're going to do a 30-day reality check. You're going to document your current capabilities. You're going to list your active problems and challenges, and you're going to write down your present skills and comfort zones, and you're going to take note of your typical daily activities, because the power isn't in a single review or a single block of time. It's in the contrast between all 3 of these blocks of time. Next, you're going to do what I like to call progress inventory. Once you've reviewed your time horizons, the next step is to build what I like to call this progress inventory, where you dedicate 15 minutes every Sunday night to reflect and fill out 3 sections: victory section, growth section, and learning section. So victory section, exactly like it sounds. What's easier now than it was last month? What do you do automatically that used to require thought? What problems have disappeared? What new capabilities have you gained? In the growth section, what are you attempting now that you wouldn't have dared before? Where have your standards risen? What new problems have you earned the right to have? What relationships have deepened or expanded? And in the learning section, what mistakes are you no longer making? What new insights have you gained? What patterns are you starting to recognize? What tools have you mastered? These 2 powerful tools, progress mirror and the progress inventory, they work together to solve the central problem we've been discussing: your brain's tendency to hide your growth behind rising standards. The progress mirror forces you to zoom out and see the bigger picture through these 3 critical time horizons. It's like stepping back from a painting to view the full canvas of your growth. And then the weekly progress inventory zooms in. It captures the subtle shifts and small victories that compound into these major transformations. And when you use them together, these tools create something, is this progress consciousness, the ability to stay ambitious while remaining aware of how far you've come. These tools aren't just about recognizing progress. It's about finding the sweet spot between hunger and satisfaction, the razor's edge where you can be simultaneously ambitious and appreciative. Because the better you get at recognizing progress, the faster you actually progress. Now, why is that? Because confidence compounds. When you can see your growth clearly, you can take bigger risks. You recover faster from setbacks. You make better decisions. You build stronger teams. You move with more conviction. It's like compound interest for your capabilities. So I want you to look at what we covered today. We spoke about a lot of different things. But of course, knowledge without action is just entertainment. So what I want you to do right now, not tomorrow, not when you have time, right now, pull up your calendar from exactly 1 year ago today. Look at what was consuming your thoughts, what was keeping you up at night, what felt impossibly hard, and write down 3 things that terrified you then, but you handle without blinking today. And that gap, that space between past terror and present normalcy, that's not just progress. That's evidence of a version of you that kept pushing, kept growing, kept showing up, even when the progress was invisible. See, your future self is already there. Looking back at this moment, they can see the mountain peaks that today feel like these insurmountable cliffs. They know exactly how far you're about to climb. So maybe it's time that you saw it too, because the truth is you're not behind, you're not stuck, you're not falling short, you're just blind to your own evolution.